Hi, we're Jen and Chris Corsi, and today we want to talk to you about how we can utilize our history with God to help us predict what's coming next and also to share it with others.
Yeah, you know what? Your brain always looks back in the rearview mirror to figure out what's around the corner. And so when you've got a lot of peace and joy and good stuff back here that you're focusing on, your brain learns to predict and expect more good things are around the corner. But when we look back in the rearview mirror and we see pain and problems and a lot of unresolved stuff, what that does is it trains your brain to expect more pain around the corner. And that's where we get into a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety. So stories are one of the best ways to pass on the good stuff and to really change your brain to start looking forward to good things. And so I really like this idea of telling stories about your history with God. So Jen, what else can they do with that?
Well, first I want to mention, as Chris said, we use our history to predict what to expect in the future. And right now we're in a period of time where we really can't predict our future in terms of physical terms. We can't predict what's coming. We can't predict how we're going to come out of this pandemic and what's going to happen. And so that leaves us feeling uncertain. But in truth, we have a history with God, and God stays the same through all of this. And so by reflecting on those times that we have felt God's nearness and his care for us, we can remind our brain that he is the same God through. And so by looking back at our history with him and how he's cared for us in the past, even through hard times, we can predict in the future that he's going to still be caring for us and still with us and still near us, even in whatever hard times we might be still coming upon.
And you know what? Your brain's identity center, what we call level 4 at Thrive, this part on the right side on the front behind your right eye, this is your identity center. So it's constantly looking for models, for examples. It's trying to figure out, who am I? And part of that is answered when we see other people's faces, when they light up to see us, but also when we watch people and see how they respond. But stories are one of the great ways to train your identity center. So sharing this history with God and this rich goodness in our interactions and our relationship with Christ, what it does is it's really speaking to our identity center. So you're passing on good stuff to other people, saying, you know what, we are the kind of people that look for the good stuff, look for God's faithfulness, look for God's presence, and thank him for his goodness and his good stuff. So this is really impactful exercise when we practice.
So what we want to do is look back and reflect on the times that God has cared for us, that he's carried us, that we have felt his presence near us, and hold on to those. And maybe even in our journals, write down a few words about each of them to help us remember. And then we want to tell the story to somebody else. It can be people in your family. It can be people in your household. It can be somebody that you call, a friend you call on the phone. And in that, you're not only helping them by telling good stories of God's goodness, but you're helping yourself by reminding yourself where God has been with you throughout this.
Yes, what's beautiful about this practice is when you think about those God moments, you feel it, you review it, you go into it, your brain is responding as though you're reliving the moment all over again. So this is a gift that keeps on giving. And so sharing the good stuff is really quite a blessing. And I think that it might even make God smile.
So should we show him how it works real quick?
Sure.
Well, so I remember when you first injured your back and our kids were 2 and 4. And it was a really hard time, really, really hard time. I was responsible for the household and the kids, and I just was very heavy. And yet I interacted with Jesus every day, and I went to him and I felt his presence with me and his encouragement and his comfort and his closeness. And I felt like he gave me what I needed for that day, that hour, that minute. And I know that even in those really hard times, he was with me, he was carrying me, he felt so close. And because of that, and telling you that, we can share that together, we can reflect on it, and it helps remind my brain, he's been with me in hard times, and he's cared for me, and he's carried me, and he's not going to stop doing that tomorrow.
That's right. And that brings us hope, because when I hear that, oh yeah, God was very faithful. And so if God was very faithful back then, he can be faithful right now, today, tomorrow, even the next day, and so on. So these stories are really a great way to build some joy, to express our faith, and to honor the living God. So have fun.